Mr. Davis, I want you to look at it and remember it. Because this is probably the first and last time that you will see me do this.
You've been someone who, despite your fame, is intensely private.
Mm-hmm. Just to correct some of the inaccuracies that have been written.
Have they hurt you?
No, not really, but I do think they bear correcting.
In the world of music, fame and glamour are sometimes just a facade. Behind every energetic dance move, every radiant smile on stage, there are dark corners that few dare to look straight into. People might see Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, as an unbeatable icon of voice and power. But they don't see that her life wasn't as dazzling as the stage lights. Before she passed, she revealed stories that tore her apart her whole life. It's a long list of men who forced her from the days she sang gospel in church to stepping into R&B, from those who stood beside her at the peak of her career, to those who used power and influence to bind her in the most horrific ways. Following these stories, you'll see the silent pain, the fear, and the harsh choices Aretha had to make to survive. 11. C.L. Franklin, the shadow behind the glamour of the preacher's family. C.L. Franklin, the pastor of New Bethel Baptist Church in Detroit, was widely revered as a pillar of faith and a hugely influential leader in the black community. The services he led drew hundreds of worshipers too, while the lavish parties at his private home became a regular stop for the very people shaping American music and the civil rights movement: Martin Luther King Jr., Sam Cooke, Clara Ward. On the surface, he looked like the devoted father and celebrated preacher, but beneath that holy robe was a far more complicated, unpredictable man lived. A house constantly filled with music, wine, and laughter was both paradise and a slow-burning furnace, quietly forging tragedy. When Aretha was still a shy little girl, her mother, Barbara, walked out in 1948. From that moment on, young Aretha became the tiny lady of the house, juggling important guests, all-night parties, and the responsibility of keeping everything running. People looked at the Franklin family with admiration because of the father's fame and prestige, but few realized how dark his power really was. Invisible control, a voice that drowned out every child's feelings, and a presence so heavy Aretha could barely breathe. In early 1954, after a party that stretched until 4 a.m, with the smell of liquor and laughter still hanging in the air, C.L. Franklin staggered into his daughter's bedroom. He whispered that Aretha was everything to Daddy now. The words sounded sweet, almost loving, but the way he looked and what he did next filled the little girl with pure terror. A room that had always felt safe turned into a prison in seconds. The faint glow of the bedside lamp made everything hazy and nightmarish. Aretha lay there frozen, too horrified to scream. It happened only once, in total silence, but it never left her mind. In the years that followed, Aretha grew up under applause and stage lights, but the buried pain followed her like a shadow. She knew that if she ever spoke, everything would collapse: her father's image, the reverence for New Bethel Church, the family's entire livelihood. In Dami's that era, the black community saw the preacher as the spiritual backbone, and women barely had a voice at all. So Aretha chose silence to protect the family name, but the price was a childhood locked inside a memory she could never tell anyone. When she stepped onto the stage, Aretha's voice was thunderous, powerful enough to hush all of Detroit. Yet behind every note was a heart full of scars. She wasn't just the golden voice the world worshipped. She was also the little girl abandoned in the middle of a family storm, a teenager raised in a brightly lit house whose soul was drowning in darkness. The older she got, the more desperately she wanted out from under her father's grip. Every career milestone felt like another cut at the rope tying her down, another act of freeing herself from the legacy of power he had forced upon her life. Aretha's later fame wasn't only artistic triumph. It was her way of finally standing up, taking back control of her own life, and stepping out of the shadow of the man who had once been her pillar, yet had taken far too much from her. 10. Edward Jordan Sr. The bitter past that Aretha Franklin never wanted to remember. Edward Jordan Sr., a notorious thug from the Black Bottom neighborhood, was famous for his playboy lifestyle and close ties to powerful figures in Detroit. Between 1954 and 1956, Jordan often hung around the preacher C.L. Franklin's house for deals, becoming a familiar face at the family's lavish parties. And it was from those parties that Jordan became part of the shadow looming over Aretha Franklin's childhood, a little girl who'd already suffered so much after her mother left. On the day Aretha was abused by her own father, Edward Jordan witnessed it all, so she was pushed into his arms to cover up C.L. Franklin's sin. Jordan, with his cold and ruthless nature, set the condition. If Aretha didn't obey, he'd spill everything around Detroit. Terrified and trapped, the little girl had no choice but to stay silent. After repeated encounters with him, Aretha got pregnant with Clarence as a teenager. Not wanting any responsibility, Jordan promised to keep quiet and not bother the preacher's family anymore, but the price Aretha paid was too high. She became a single mother, dropped out of school, her childhood basically gone. The months that followed, she lived in fear and shame. Her son was also raised under the name of C.L. Franklin's child. The problem was, 2 years after she gave birth to her first child, Jordan ran into her again by chance and used the old reason to threaten her. Aretha had no other choice, had to give in to him until she got pregnant with her second child in 1957. At that time, Jordan was arrested for violence and drug dealing. Aretha escaped his threats but carried a lifelong fear, afraid that her 2 sons would grow up labeled as children of a rapist. The decision to stay silent wasn't just to protect the family's reputation and maintain the dignified image of New Bethel Church, but also to protect the kids. The image of Aretha Franklin later shining on stage, with her voice echoing through Detroit and fame spreading across America, was the result of an extraordinary effort to overcome that dark past. But those painful years, being forced, threatened, and deceived, also created the toughness, determination, and deep emotion in every note of her music. Anyone looking at the stage glamour only sees the brilliance, but few know that behind it is a little girl who turned from victim to legend, transforming pain into strength, turning a tragic past into an indelible source of musical inspiration. 9. Ted White. The brutal oppression from the husband and manager Ted White, Aretha Franklin's first husband and also her first manager, was a notorious gangster in Detroit, wealthy and powerful. When Aretha was just 19, fresh off signing with Columbia, no hits yet, Ted entered her life with a flashy appearance and street connections that made everyone wary. But his role wasn't just managing music. He was the dark shadow oppressing Aretha's life. On the surface, people saw a power couple, but behind the glamour was fear, violence, and crushing pressure. Ted White didn't just control Aretha's career. He forced her into horrifying situations where her fame and even her life were on the line. In 1961, as Aretha was just stepping into her professional music path, Ted White started using violence to control her. He beat her multiple times in front of the band, then at night forced sex on her as a way to make up. This scene repeated over and over, drowning Aretha in fear and humiliation. Even on tours, he gave her no rest. In 1968 in Amsterdam, Ted turned the tour into an unforgettable nightmare. In the hotel room, he locked the door, cornered Aretha, tied her up, and said if she wanted to keep the hit Respect, she had to learn to submit. You can't deny Ted White decided the direction of Aretha's career. Thanks to his protection and connections, Atlantic signed a big deal in 1966, paving the way for the hits that made her the Queen of Soul. But the price was too steep. Aretha gradually fell into heavy drinking and drugs. She even tried multiple times to escape the hell as her fragile soul was constantly pushed to the extreme. During the years with Ted, Aretha didn't dare breathe a word about what she endured. The public didn't know she was regularly abused and forced. She was afraid it would destroy the Queen of Soul image at its peak, since society back then didn't see forced sex in marriage as a crime. And many still assumed a beaten wife was at fault. Her career, fame, body, and spirit were all bound. Ted White was the man Aretha both needed and feared, depended on and hated, a haunting power figure that shaped her early years in music. So she went through 9 terrifying years of marriage, controlled, threatened, and abused. It wasn't until 1969, after being beaten to a miscarriage, that she finally had the courage to file for divorce and step out of that hell. 8. Ken Cunningham, the troubled second love that pushed Aretha Franklin into darkness. Ken Cunningham, Aretha Franklin's boyfriend and manager from 1970 to 1976, was a notorious drug dealer in Detroit, famous for his reckless lifestyle and dark connections in the underworld. When Aretha had just gone through a stormy divorce with Ted White, addiction to alcohol and cocaine surrounding her. She met Ken by chance through those stimulants. He entered her life, seeming like light, but actually a new shadow. He didn't just manage contracts and schedules, he controlled every dollar, every decision, turning Aretha's glamorous stage life into a long chain of threats and manipulation. Not much different from Ted White, Ken Cunningham quickly grabbed control of Aretha's finances. He kept all her performance fees, making her totally dependent on him for alcohol and cocaine. The stimulants were also how she kept up with the packed schedule to support her 4 kids. But Ken didn't stop there. He forced her to sleep with friends and partners to pay off drug debts or seal business deals, turning their bedroom into a transaction spot. 1971 marked Aretha's most horrifying memory. Ken brought 3 men into the room and declared that if she wanted to keep singing, she had to please the clients. Aretha, struggling with addiction and the pressure to maintain her career, had no choice but to submit to survive. Every time she stepped on stage, her voice still boomed, but behind the glamour was physical and emotional pain only she knew. Her career, fame, and motherhood became reasons for her silence. Revealing the truth could mean losing custody, getting arrested for drug involvement, and destroying her Queen of Soul image in the public's eyes. The consequences of those years weren't just a worn-out body, but a broken spirit. In 1975, Aretha was hospitalized after a brutal beating, then nearly died from a cocaine overdose. She realized during this time she was living on a knife's edge, balancing life, career, and motherhood. That life-or-death moment pulled her out of the toxic relationship with Ken. Even threatened, she wasn't afraid anymore. She threatened him back, worst case, mutual destruction, because she had a list of his illegal partners that could rot him in jail. In the end, they split after 6 years together. 7. John Hammond. The price to pay for the Columbia contract. John Hammond, top producer at Columbia, was one of the most powerful bosses in the American recording industry in the early 1960s. When Aretha Franklin turned 18, fresh from Detroit to New York alone, he became the one deciding her music path. Hammond was famous for spotting and nurturing talent, but behind that fame was massive power and influence, enough to shake any artist's career. For Aretha, he was both opportunity and threat, playing a decisive role in her first years entering the music industry. In 1960, Aretha stepped into Manhattan with empty hands and a confused heart. She quickly caught Hammond's eye and was invited to audition. But the audition spot wasn't in the office, but at Hammond's private apartment. Hammond, with overwhelming power and the confidence of an industry leader, said if she wanted her debut album funded, she had to stay that night just once to get it all. Otherwise, she might never get a foot in the industry. Aretha, scared and confused, burst into tears, but after calming down, she agreed, understanding this was her only shot to open Columbia's door. That night, she traded herself for the contract, but didn't expect it was just the start of a long period of pressure. Over the next 6 years, Aretha recorded 10 albums at Columbia, each one the result of extraordinary effort and patient endurance. Aretha chose silence, not daring to tell anyone about what happened with John Hammond, because one word could turn her into an ambitious person who traded her body for a contract, destroying her fragile but promising image in the public's eyes. Silence became her armor, protecting her career but also imprisoning her emotions and turning her early career years into a long chain of haunting days. Over time, the stage glamour covered up all the pain. People only heard the soulful voice, saw the radiant queen of soul, but few knew that behind the success were tearing choices and long tear-soaked nights. John Hammond, with his power and influence, opened Columbia's bright door, but also planted a deep shadow in Aretha Franklin's soul about the first time she had to sacrifice her body for opportunity. 6. Jerry Wexler, the manipulator of Aretha Franklin's path to the throne. Jerry Wexler, legendary producer at Atlantic Records, was the one who turned Aretha Franklin from a young failed singer at Columbia into the renowned Queen of Soul. He held ultimate power in the studio, able to turn an ordinary voice into a global phenomenon. With golden albums like Lady Soul, Aretha Now, and Spirit in the Dark, Wexler was tied to every resounding success. Aretha's exploding career was linked to this powerful producer, but behind the success were years of humiliation. For her, he was both savior and haunting shadow. In 1967, Aretha's first recording session at Muscle Shoals, Alabama, turned chaotic. A fight between Ted White and Rick Hall over interests turned the studio into a battlefield. The sound cut off, everyone panicked, and Aretha stood in the storm's eye, exhausted and confused. That night, Wexler took responsibility to drive her back to the hotel because Ted seemed out of control. But once in the hotel, he bluntly told her only he could save the album. And if I Never Loved a Man wanted to hit #1, she knew what to do. Aretha, drunk and stressed from the most important contract of her career, didn't have the strength to resist. That night, she traded herself to keep the music path opening before her. In her intoxicated state and under Wexler's pressure, she had to agree to what he wanted, not out of desire, but because her career was unfinished. This was the fateful night, laying the foundation for her next albums to become icons. In later recording sessions, Aretha always avoided Wexler's visits, and every time he demanded, in the car, in the studio, even in the bathroom, whiskey became the only thing helping her endure, also the way to get through the fear of Ted finding out. From then on, Aretha started drinking whiskey right in the studio to keep from collapsing. Later, even after escaping Wexler's ties and the violent marriage with Ted, she still stayed silent about what happened during that time, because the man who lifted her from Columbia failure was Wexler himself. Revealing the truth might not get sympathy, but instead could destroy the Queen of Soul image, shaking her brilliant career in the public's eyes. She understood sometimes you have to endure darkness to keep the light, to let the music live on and fame not fade. But over time, the booming hits, golden albums, and renowned fame couldn't hide the reality. Aretha Franklin went through tense nights, pressure, and forced trades of her body to survive in the ruthless music industry. Wexler was both savior and threat, the one who lifted her to success, also leaving a deep haunting. 5. Clive Davis, the deep shadow in the Arista empire. Clive Davis, big boss at Arista Records, was the one who built a new music empire in the 1980s, specializing in hunting talent and turning seemingly washed-up artists into new icons. With the ability to direct trends and ultimate power in the industry, Davis made decisions no one dared deny. When Aretha Franklin hit 38, her career plummeting, millions in tax debt and dropped by Atlantic, Clive became her only lifeline for a second chance. But he didn't just promise hits and money, he imposed his power on her. In 1980, Aretha entered the deepest crisis of her life. Lupus started tormenting her body, the pain getting serious, health weakening, and career on the brink of despair. Clive Davis, seeing revival potential, flew to her Encino mansion once a month. Those visits weren't just business. He stayed overnight, despite Aretha's health condition. Every time he showed up, she felt the clear pressure and wanted to resist. But Clive made it clear from the first meeting, for albums Jump to It and Who's Zoomin' Who to hit top 10, she had to agree to his demands. Aretha, struggling with lupus torment, alcohol and morphine, didn't have the strength to fight the power and temptation. Night after night, their meetings became a survival challenge for Aretha. Her body worn out from illness and painkillers, her spirit tense like a string. Every time Clive entered the house, she could only tell herself the trade was necessary. Career, fame, second chance, all in the Arista boss's hands. Each night passed, Aretha had to up the morphine, more alcohol, to endure physical pain and mental pressure. Her weight spiraled out of control, body got weaker, but in return she still stood on stage, recorded, brought hits to Arista. The consequences were heavier than Aretha imagined. Lupus worsened, body overloaded, but she didn't dare speak. She knew if the public learned she had to sell herself for hits, the second revival image would collapse instantly. Silence became strategy, the only way to keep her career, protect custody, and continue living with music. The successful albums in the 1980s, 1990s proved her extraordinary endurance. Every stage appearance, every hit release, the public saw a strong queen of soul. But few knew behind the glamour were horrifying nights, illness pain, alcohol and morphine, and forced kneeling under Clive Davis's power. The second revival wasn't just a music victory, but a survival story, where Aretha Franklin turned pain and stress into strength to exist and keep shining in a ruthless industry. 4. Glenn Turman. The glamorous marriage on the outside but rotten. Inside, Glenn Turman, Hollywood actor known for blockbuster film and TV roles, was a symbol of charm and power in the 70s-80s entertainment world. When he married Aretha Franklin, Turman appeared as a savior, helping the Queen of Soul recover her image after years of addiction and scandals with Ken Cunningham. Their marriage was hyped in PR, praised by media as a protective wall for Aretha's fame and career, creating a glamorous veil hiding the real crises deep inside. Few knew behind the smiles and magazine splendor was a tragic marriage, where pressure and mental violence seeped into every corner of her life. In 1978, Aretha entered marriage with Glenn Turman, hoping for stability and a peaceful home. But from the start, this marriage wasn't like the media image. Glenn cheated openly challenging Aretha's trust, respect, and feelings. But every time he came home, he shamelessly imposed family control on her, forcing sex regardless of her health and emotional pain. Once, in 1981, Aretha had severe bleeding from Glenn's roughness, to the point of hospitalization. The physical pain exhausted her, but the mental torment was what killed her. Just 2 days later, he made her come home, forcing her to continue the wife role his way. Nights like that gradually pushed her into exhaustion and panic. But to keep the happy family image in newspapers and present a stable Aretha to the public, she could only stay silent. Tours, performances, all had to maintain the perfect outer image of an artist, while inside, she endured her husband's cruelty night after night. Silence became protective armor for fame, but also imprisoned her soul. Glenn became the power center, turning the home into a prison where Aretha was confined and controlled. Then, as inevitable, severe depression hit. She gained nearly 40 pounds. Body continued battling stress and high-dose antidepressants. The years 1978-1982, Aretha Franklin still shone in her second revival glamour, but behind the smiles and sparkling stage appearances was a horrifying chain of days. Glenn Turman turned what seemed like a saving land into hell. In 1982, when endurance exceeded limits, Aretha finally fought back, fled the house, separated, and filed for divorce. But under Glenn's pressure, the divorce reason was announced simply as "can't communicate" and "many misunderstandings." 3. Sam Cooke, the betrayer of Aretha Franklin's friendship, Sam Cooke, gospel and soul legend, was one of the most powerful voices in the 50s-60s. Not just famous for his superior voice and classic hits, Cooke was a role model idol for many young artists, especially in the American black community. He had a close relationship with the Franklin family, often staying over at their house when performing in Detroit. Cooke was mentor, advisor, and the springboard taking Aretha from church stage to major labels. But behind that close friendship hid a dark corner, making Aretha silently endure for years. In 1956, Aretha Franklin was rising as a young gospel star, her voice moving hearts, gradually affirming talent. Sam Cooke often appeared at performances, then stayed at the Franklin house like close friends. But one night, after a long party, when everyone was asleep, Cooke suddenly entered her room. At this point, Aretha was still too young, not fully understanding this man's power, simply trusting the big brother she admired. Cooke whispered seductive words mixed with pressure under the guise of teaching. He said she had to know how to love to become a star and promised to make her big like him. If she didn't agree, he said she'd never rise up. Aretha, with her abused past, understood what Cooke's how to love meant, but she didn't refuse. She was driven by the desire for recognition, for love. After that night, Sam introduced Aretha to major labels. In return, she accepted more and more intimate times, the subtle forcing to the point she thought it was pure brotherly affection. Silence was the mandatory thing she understood herself. Cooke was the idol, the brother she admired, the one with power to open her career path. If public, this image would collapse, her faith in music, in her brother, and relationships would shatter. The consequences lingered and sank deep when Cooke was no longer passionate as before. Aretha became withdrawn, afraid to open up, but also dreamed of close love, a protection she called Big Brother style. That mix of fear and longing influenced her later relationships. The years 1956-1958, Aretha shone on gospel stages, but few knew behind the stage lights were times she was forced under the name of teaching by the big brother she cherished most. 2. Dennis Edwards. The Motown star who took advantage of drunkenness to go wild, Dennis Edwards, lead singer of The Temptations after replacing David Ruffin, rose as a power star, new icon of Motown. With peak voice, stage, charisma, and wide industry connections, Edwards quickly became a sought-after name. During Aretha Franklin's fresh divorce from Ted White, struggling with alcohol and cocaine, Dennis entered her life as both opportunity and challenge. They met often in Detroit and New York, where music world and Motown power mixed with nights of alcohol and drunkenness. Late 1969, after a joint show at Apollo Theater, Aretha, drunk, missing her kids and messed up with personal pains, was taken back to the hotel by Dennis. Without waiting for her to steady her mind, he forced sex, saying she needed to prove she was worthy of a star like him. Fear of losing Dennis's help made Aretha stay silent. Later times, Dennis often used cocaine to relax her, turning addiction into a control tool. In return, Dennis promised to help her connect with power networks, someone backing quietly to get through the dark phase. But the price was too big. Early 1970, Aretha had an unwanted pregnancy, then miscarried. Add to that the lingering effects of alcohol and cocaine addiction, making her cancel many shows. Silence was her only choice, because a scandal with a Temptations star would destroy her strong image, hurt the black community proud of Motown, and push her career to the end. Dennis Edwards in Motown's Glamour was both the springboard taking Aretha to the world and the shadow weighing on her youth and soul. That relationship only lasted a few months until Dennis no longer found Aretha fresh. In those months, every note she sang hid unshareable pain, every performance a struggle between career and haunting. Outside was the radiant Queen of Soul, inside a young girl controlled by powerful men, forced to choose silence to survive, for her music to be heard, and dreams not to shatter amid long nights of drunkenness and cocaine. 1. Willie Wilkerson, the lover who bound Aretha Franklin until her last days. Willie Wilkerson, famous Detroit businessman, was PR'd as Aretha Franklin's loyal lover in her final phase. As a power in construction, he appeared as support, both caring and managing the Queen of Soul's life when illness weighed heavy. However, in that caring process, Wilkerson also brought pain to Aretha. His appearance in Aretha's life as she struggled with end-stage pancreatic cancer wasn't simply good things. From 2011 to 2018, Aretha was so weak she was bedridden, almost unable to care for herself. Wilkerson came daily, but behind love and care was forcing. He demanded sex even when she was in pain, even took nude photos to threaten her if she cut his monthly allowance, turning love and old age support into control tool. Aretha, weak and exhausted, stayed silent to ensure she still had care and her illness not exposed to the public. Her final months became a bitter, tragic chain. She had to endure physical and emotional pain. Loneliness and despair deepened when she realized this help came with control. Even in her weakest days, she still had to submit, because if this leaked, the world would see the Queen of Soul in humiliating image exploited to the last minute. The trade for silence was care and protection from media. Wilkerson, with all his power and connections, kept all her health info secret, ensuring her final days didn't become tabloid sensationalism. But the price too steep. Aretha lingered in pain, loneliness, and weighed down spirit until the very end. Even on long nights alone, she wrestled with illness and helpless feeling, realizing even her last love had become chains. On August 16, 2018, Aretha Franklin passed, ending her legendary life in extreme pain. The final shadow of her life wasn't just pancreatic cancer, but a distorted love, bound until her last breath. In the world's eyes, she remained the Queen of Soul, an immortal music icon. But behind the glamour, Willie Wilkerson left a cruel mark, turning her last days into nightmare. Aretha's life, from talented young girl to unbeatable Queen of Soul, went through a dark journey that only after her death did the public know. And today's story about Aretha Franklin is just a small part of the secrets in the celebrity world. How do you feel after the truth is exposed? Are you shocked, or do you know other secrets about her that many don't? Drop a comment below, share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any upcoming videos from us, where we'll dive deep into the corners behind the stage lights. Every subscription and comment from you is motivation for us to keep uncovering stories few dare tell, revealing the dark sides of the art world.